Mr. Attorney General, my colleague just said that you should be held in contempt of Congress, and that is quite rich, because the guy who's leaving the hearing room right now, Mr. Jordan, is about 500 days into evading his subpoena. About 500 days. So if we're going to talk about contempt of Congress, let's get real. I mean, are you serious that Jim Jordan, a witness to one of the greatest crimes ever committed in America, a crime where more prosecutions have occurred than any crime committed in America, refuses to help his country, and we're going to get lectured about subpoena compliance and contempt of Congress? Jim Jordan won't even honor a lawful subpoena? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? There's no credibility on that side. Mr. Attorney General, you are serious, they are not. You are decent, they are not. You are fair, they are not. So I welcome you to the law firm of Insurrection LLP, where they work every single day on behalf of one client, Donald Trump. And they do that at the expense of millions of Americans who need the government to stay open, who want their kids safe in their schools, and would like to see Ukraine stay in the fight so that we don't help Russia. That's the expense that this nonsense, this clown show, I'd call it a clown show, except they actually have real responsibilities that affect real Americans. It's the difference between one side that believes in governing and one side that believes in ruling.
This is Eric Swalwell calling out Jim Jordan for his abject hypocrisy during a congressional hearing. Jordan, of all people, had the audacity to claim that Merrick Garland should be held in contempt of Congress, at which point Swalwell rightly pointed out that Jordan himself had ignored a subpoena to testify before the January 6th committee. And I gotta say, I really do appreciate how Swalwell even offered up a giant clock denoting how much time has passed since Jordan's been ignoring his subpoena, because sometimes words are hard and pictures can be very helpful. Notice too how Jordan can't even be bothered to show that he's paying attention. He is so committed to his smugness that he can't even acknowledge when he's being called out to his own face for his own hypocrisy, because something party of personal responsibility. And this isn't the first time that this near exact thing has happened either. Here's Swalwell calling him out to his face back in March.
And I think it's quite rich that we are talking about subpoena compliance under a chairman of the full committee who was absolutely out of subpoena compliance in the last Congress. So we're going to haul witnesses in here today and claim that they did not comply with subpoenas or requests. And that request is so rich because it's coming from a chairman who himself did not comply with the January 6th committee's request. So May 31, you see a letter sent to then Representative Jordan asking that he honor his subpoena. He was asked over and over and over, you were a witness to a crime. You were a witness to the greatest crime ever committed with the most criminals ever indicted in America. Will you help your country? Will you comply with that subpoena? No compliance, crickets, absolute defiance of the subpoena. And because of that defiance, the chairman was referred, and it's still pending, to the House Ethics Committee. And why? Well, it's because he took an oath. And I want to have the congressional oath put up there, but the congressional oath mandates that members of Congress defend the Constitution without any mental reservation, or as it says on the slide, purpose of evasion. Not responding to a congressional subpoena is a direct purpose of evasion. So this is our chairman, hauling all us here, everyone here today, people at the Department of Justice, the Department of Education, who are doing important work to claim they are out of compliance when he himself is currently out of compliance.
I mean, you really can't make this up. The Republican chairman of the Judiciary Committee isn't willing to follow the same rules that he's trying to enforce on other people, because rules for thee, but not for me. And of course, Jim Jordan is far from the only Republican who's previously defied subpoenas from the January 6th committee. Some others include Mark Meadows, former White House Chief of Staff, Dan Scavino, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Communications, Steve Bannon, former White House Chief Strategist, Peter Navarro, former White House Trade Advisor, Jeffrey Clark, former Acting Assistant Attorney General, Kash Patel, former Pentagon Chief of Staff, Mike Flynn, former National Security Advisor, John Eastman, former law professor. And of course, all of them are Republicans and all of them allies of Jim Jordan. As of this recording, 2 of these people have actually been convicted of contempt of Congress for defying a subpoena from the January 6th committee. Steve Bannon was convicted on 2 counts of contempt of Congress in July 2022 and was sentenced to 4 months in prison. And Peter Navarro was convicted of 2 counts of contempt of Congress just this month and is scheduled to be sentenced in January of 2024. So yes, the very same thing that Jim Jordan is currently in defiance of has been prosecuted in a court of law, resulting in a prison sentence. And again, this guy is chair of the Judiciary Committee, who not only has oversight duties of America's top legal officials, but also has the gall to then chastise those same officials by accusing them of contempt of Congress, while himself being guilty of that exact same thing. If he was capable of shame, this would probably be a pretty embarrassing moment for him. And just for a moment, let's actually break down what Republicans are ignoring subpoenas for and compare that to what they accuse Joe Biden of, without even a shred of evidence to actually prove any of their claims. Republicans are refusing to cooperate with a bipartisan committee established by Congress for the purpose of investigating a violent, deadly insurrection fomented and incited by a former president of the United States for the express purpose of halting the counting of legally cast ballots by American citizens and the subsequent peaceful transfer of power. This was the first time in American history that a violent assault on the peaceful transfer of power has ever occurred, all at the hands of a party that quite literally brands itself constitutionalists. This is an event that currently has led to the federal indictment of said former president on 4 criminal charges by a grand jury, including conspiracy to defraud the United States, obstruction of the constitutional vote certification proceedings, and conspiracy to violate civil rights. President Biden, meanwhile, has not been charged with any crimes, nor have any law enforcement officials sought to charge him, because, and I hope you're sitting down for this, there is no evidence of any crime. You see, while the January 6th insurrection was a blatantly obvious crime that played out live before our very eyes on national television, the crimes that Joe Biden is accused of are based on debunked conspiracy theories and nebulous accusations without a single iota of proof from any credible witnesses. For example, Republicans recently trotted out a guy named Devin Archer, a former business partner of Hunter Biden, who the GOP spent weeks hyping up as their star witness. They swore up and down that Archer would provide damning evidence that Joe and Hunter Biden were involved in influence peddling schemes. Here's what happened when Devin Archer finally came in to testify.
He did describe that there were approximately 20 occasions over the course of their nearly decade-long business relationship where, when one of them called the other, that Hunter Biden would ask his father to say hello to whomever he was at dinner. He said there were some times when it was friends and sometimes when it was potential business partners or business partners. But the witness was unequivocal and stated very clearly that they never discussed any business on that phone conversations. There were niceties, and there was a hello, and we talked about the weather or whatever it was, but it was never any business. And I think it's really important to remember that during this time period that we're talking about here, Beau Biden, Hunter Biden's brother and President Biden's son, became very ill with cancer and died. That was in the spring of 2015. And the witness described in vivid detail about how devastating that was to both Hunter Biden and to Joe Biden, and how their communications picked up dramatically in the aftermath, because Joe Biden was calling his son to check on him, and Hunter Biden was calling his dad to check on him. It had nothing to do with business, and that is the sum and substance of what the testimony was.
Archer was literally asked point blank if he has any knowledge of any wrongdoing by Joe Biden. He responded, and I quote, "No." And to emphasize, this was the GOP's smoking gun witness. So no, for the umpteenth time, Republicans have nothing on Joe Biden. And yet, despite those glaring differences, Republicans believe that it's no big deal to ignore subpoenas for the actual crime that resulted in actual charges and actual convictions, and yet the crime of the century to ignore subpoenas for the thing without any shred of evidence. But hey, they're desperate to pin something on Joe Biden, so I guess that makes it all justified. The simple fact, though, is that none of this nonsense is going to stop until Republicans lose power. We are dealing with a party that has no shame, no scruples, and no desire to govern. Their sole job is to audition on a daily basis for a right-wing media ecosystem that quite literally rewards the lies and the disinformation. So the Democrats should play hardball, especially when it comes to these bad faith hearings by Republicans, because there is no justification for them in the first place. And frankly, The last people who have a leg to stand on when it comes to subpoenas are Jim Jordan and the rest of the Republican Party. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to the channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.